everyone, we're back again. It's Seka from Lotus Counselling, and I'm excited to be speaking with Kate McNeil again. So, she is the Burnout Lady, and she's widely known for her work in preventing burnout and helping people recover from it. So, not just at an individual level, but at a systemic and cultural level as well. So, welcome, Kate.
Hi, Seka. Great to see you again.
Nice to see you. So, more questions for you.
Hmm.
Why do you think burnout is especially relevant right now?
Well, it's everywhere, isn't it? And when I tell people I'm the burnout lady, they go, "Wow, that's really topical and that's really current." And that's all different types of people. It's not just, people that are, working in a office building or something. And I mean, I have some more a philosophical take on this, which is around the third symptom or characteristic of burnout, around purpose and meaningfulness. And I think that particularly since the pandemic, and that's kind of heightened a few things in society where we do feel more distrust and a sense of dislocation from each other. And part of the burnout experience, I know for me and for many others, is just this wanting to be part of something bigger, wanting to contribute. And I can be clinical in answering questions about burnout and talk about, stress and tiredness and the sort of mental health parts. But I think why it's actually the bigger issue now is the third characteristic, is this working with systems and big problems going on in the world, whether it's the climate, whether it's, refugee and migration issues, geopolitics, economic instability, cost of living. All these things are really got compounded what we call in policy wicked problems. There's no root cause analysis where you can just pick an answer. And people know that and they don't trust the leaders to really, come up with the solutions. And I think this is a little bit more of an existential answer, but I think that is actually I look at the sort of the depth of the burnout, and that's, collectively. And what that means is for people is we have more pressure on us to actually work out what we want and what is meaningful to us amongst all that noise. And how do we look
Mm.
after ourselves amongst all that going on? And we can have friendships rupture over political beliefs, and we can have, having to, make big changes because of financial issues. Or how do we stay true to ourselves and think about what do we need to contribute and what do we need to be able to contribute to these bigger issues?
Yeah, like we talked about before, it seems like the course really covers that whole spectrum from, really personal,
Mm.
micro, individual level, all the way to those macro issues that are really beyond our control, but very much worth our consideration.
Mm.
Um, so, how do you personally see burnout evolving in the next, say, decade of the workplace?
Mm. Yeah, this is very much wrapped up in what's called the future of work. So people that are future thinkers and they postulate about what workplaces are going to be like, in particularly like with AI, for example, and different changes coming in. And sorry. What I see is that, there's a sort of splitting with people where people are either in a position where they're detaching from expecting anything apart from a paycheck, and it's becoming more obvious to them that work is the paycheck. And that then, there's movements like the quiet quitting, things like that, where you just, or presenteeism, where workplaces know that their staff are kind of there, but not really there. So I think I would put that under the umbrella of burnout. It's probably not going to be called that when you're talking directly about those issues. It's this profound disengagement. And what that means is, from a business point of view, businesses are struggling to get confident and capable and motivated and engaged staff. We have some generational overlays there with Gen Z and the different um, narratives around their experience of work as not something that definitely my generation X and my parents' generation really aspired to, career paths as a way to, get married and have kids and buy the house.
Mm.
So we have a very fundamental rupture in what we should be actually wanting for ourselves and what success is. So yeah, so part one, I would be looking at this group of sort of disenfranchised people doing very monotonous um, work that's not so engaging for them, and then having the risk of that sort of AI, and then how that's all going to play out in terms of, what does that mean for employers and business and the economy broadly in terms of being able to source workers, and particularly like healthcare and things where it's not optional. It's not optional to have teachers. Like it's like, or everything can't go online. And I don't have, obviously I don't have the answers here, but I think it's a way of going, well, these are the trends. So how do we put ourselves and empower our staff and empower like our future retention strategies, and how we go about getting people and invite them into an organization to actually contribute, and what they call in management adaptive management, to be able to actually move with these trends of what's going on, rather than having this cookie cutter job roles and production lines. It's like this is a very fluid, creative, organic space that's opening up.
And if I dare to sort of interrupt the flow of this interview, because something that you said
Mm,
has really struck me, and
mm,
it's something that I'm very interested in. And while you said that disengagement might not necessarily be direct, like people might not see that as directly related to burnout. Certainly, apathy is
mm,
one
mm,
of the criteria.
mm.
So,
Yeah, yeah,
and and I think this morning there was an age, an article in the Age about how boomers need to have more empathy for Gen Z, because
yeah,
they're looking at there's no future sort of thing,
yeah,
and they're
yeah.
boomers have worked really hard, but there needs to be that consideration. So
Mm,
where I'm coming from is Gen Z are showing signs already of disengagement,
yeah,
of
yeah,
apathy, and
yeah,
then how does that? I mean, it's a kind
yeah,
of difficult
yeah,
question, but how does
yeah,
that tie into burnout, and how does that?
yeah,
So then we've got
yeah,
generational
yeah, yeah.
factors.
Yeah, and I mean, I've worked and experienced some of that with managing like the Gen Z, just this sort of trope of Gen Z stuff, or what they're sort of accused of. And I mean, empathy is one thing, but it's actually skill of being able to craft work with them so that, you've got your idea of what has to get done. And I'm talking about sort of more skilled jobs where people have got, lots of degrees, and they might come into work, but it doesn't match up what they thought work would be, or what is actually relevant to them and what they see is going on in the world. So, there's, the best workplaces I see, provide for people to do projects that are meaningful to them, and, not necessarily all the time, but acknowledge that there's going to be things where people are just doing it to learn and roach skills, because that's what we had at Gen X. Is I could repeat a whole lot of, sort of not so. I mean, I did my time in the trenches. I could just go and do some work because I had to sort of go through those junior ranks. And that's getting like, there's no, that because I had the motivation. But if I don't have the motivation, what's going to, the short-term horizon, and also the frequency of people changing jobs, and the stats on how often people change jobs now, it's like really, really, low or high turnover. So these are very much the things, and having honest conversations would be my number one answer. Like if you have, the best thing you can do is, and if someone's here for a paycheck and that's the answer, do you know how to have that conversation? I mean, it's legitimate, it's
Yeah,
honest, it's honest. And I think sometimes, bringing that honesty, go, well, this has to work for both of us. And, this is what we're going to need to do. We're going to work out something where we need to actually, you need to be contributing here. Mm,
yeah. Clearly, burnout is a multi-dimensional issue. It's
mm,
yeah. There's so much to it, which I'm discovering in this interview.
yeah.
So, well, do you have any advice? Sort of skipping here, but on a practical level, do you have any advice for someone who suspects that they're already burning out?
I would say to do the course. Right. Look, the important thing with placing yourself in what's going on is being able to carve out some time where you can give it attention. When people are in burnout, the most common thing is they don't think they're burned out, and they're, because of that sort of second symptom, which is that sort of negative outlook, they don't think that anything they do will help. So there's this negative, orientation to the issue of I'm burned out. It's like, well, so what? I'm just going to keep going and hope for the best. That's the type of thought process people are in. And, it's all very well for a course or a therapist or whatever it is, a gym membership. It's not real. They know that, like, it's not going to be one thing like that that's going to solve it. But what it might be more like is carving out a little bits of time going forward and looking at what they can actually scale back. When people are burned out, one of the most common things is people say is you've got to just cut, you've got to say no, you've got to look at your prioritization of what you're doing. If you don't have time to actually reflect and think about clearly, have some time out. And if you have physical exhaustion on that, that might need to be the first thing. You might just have some physical exhaustion that if you were not tired, how would that change? How would that change how you're seeing a situation? Because if
Mm.
you're tired, we know what like when we're tired. We just everything's like, can be very yeah. We know. So it's like sleep, chronic sleep deprivation or something. So if there's something like that, then that sort of physical help, whether it's a GP, whether it's getting on some sort of supported care plan, it's important to deal with some of that physical stuff. And I'm not the person for that around those sort of physical supports, but things like that basic, like getting your bloods done and getting those basic checkups, probably is the best place to
Mm.
start.
Yeah, great. So, on a kind of a related note, how does your course differ from some of the other resources out there?
Well, by focusing on burnout, I'm wanting, I designed this course so that people could target and apply all the stuff that's out there about burnout and go, how does that apply to me? Like, how does it apply to my schedule for the week, to my financial stress, to my relationship? How is it affecting those areas of my life? What's the most important sort of symptom that I want to actually address here? And expect, that will benefit other areas of your life. But pick the things where burnout's really causing you problems and be able to target some solutions that will work for that. And as I mentioned in the sort of our part one is it can be work and it can be personal life and a combination of the two. So someone from a non-English speaking background is going to find it harder to speak up to their boss to get clear instructions. And that will bring up the fact that they're not a native speaker. That's a personal part of, what their challenge is in workplaces. So you need to be able to validate and work with both those things and help somebody really understand, what's the situation that they can, work towards to improve that.
Mm. Yeah. And look, just sorry, this is something I'm just throwing in. Are you hoping to build a community, build a conversation where people with burnout are interacting? Like, is this a long-term
I think within
goal?
organizations, so there's a lag. People can do the course in a group and then they get to be able to have those conversations. And I also do group facilitation and team burnout workshops within what I do. So that if they do the course first, they're going to be able to have, really good conversations straight away. I'm not going to be going into a workplace trying to sort of build the basic vocabulary of what we're talking about. So that's one thing I'd like to be doing more of. I've got a couple of workplaces I'm working with now around that. And the broader conversation, though, I think is also, this understanding of employers can't do everything and they just can't. And, managers can't fix everything. Managers that you look to help are often going through their own burnout layers from above and from
Mm.
below. So it's more like understanding the systemic sort of without getting too complex. And, I do have the brain to go very wide, but I do really want to bring it to people just to sort of break it down a bit to say that this is why you're not going to just get one answer. But if you appreciate what's going on in the big picture, then you can actually see what your power is and where you can focus your attention and where you can actually make better choices for yourself which end up
Mm.
benefiting the system, like we see with working with neurodiversity or something. You raise something, and then all the neurotypicals go, "Oh yeah, that's much better." Or like things like bigger print for screens or something. Like these things are human things that help a lot of people, and that's what these conversations can do.
Yeah, great. So what's the single most important message you think that you want the course participants to walk away with?
Ooh. Help is out there. Help is out there. And yeah, you matter. Your contribution matters. So if you're in a situation where you know you've got gifts and you want to contribute and you can't, either just because you're burned out, you're tired, you can't see the situation as a positive potential, remember that you matter and you have a contribution and that you have a right to have that and contribute.
Mm. And there's a light at the end of the tunnel, I
Right at the end
suppose,
of the
that, you know,
tunnel,
that
it's not
people
as,
have been able to recover.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
And you're not
can I
alone.
just throw in,
You're not alone as the other.
yeah. Um, can I just throw in a wild question, something that I haven't thought of? When you have people hire you in the corporate space, you've got managers, directors,
Mm.
um, what do you think? How do you think they're thinking differently, or what's going on for them that they've recognised um, that there is burnout happening? That firstly, they've recognised that they've been able to identify maybe within their team that there's stuff going on, and then actually jumped to the conclusion that, oh, maybe I can contribute to resolving this rather than,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
this is an individual. Yeah. So what's
yeah.
different in them?
With organizations, the most common reason is I'm either approached directly by somebody within teams that are burnt out because they don't know what to do and their teams are suffering and they know it and they just don't know what to do. And often that can be affecting their performance metrics or KPIs of some kind. And they would like to, work beyond the tools. Often they've got a few tools, like things like, they've got different surveys you can do with staff around engagement. You might have some leadership programs, you've got some wellbeing initiatives, and they're going, this isn't kind of fitting the actual problem. So, we can offer, flexible working and we can offer these things, but I think it's something that's going on where they're like, how is this? We can have the management issues might be, the executive not being able to think through the implications of work health safety and the sort of exposure to frontline psychological risks, and they're not aware of, the experience of their staff on the ground. And that can be an issue of like this is actually a risk in the sort of more legal sense. And sometimes that's the conversation because it actually allows them to go, we need to do some due diligence and some risk mitigation here. So it does depend. If it's a person, like an individual, they also need to know their delegation. Like, can they hire somebody, and what's going to be, what's the best way to sell it to their executive or their management team, and also what kind of results do they want to solve now? Like, what do they want? Usually in the business world, it's like, what's the immediate problem they want to
Mm.
solve? But then part of solving that immediate problem, these other things can arise, and that just depends on their appetite to work, in a longer term capacity, or whether they just need something immediately. Does that answer?
So just a final question. Um, so obviously that, people can access this course and be able to start doing some of these activities and really helping themselves straight away, by the sound of it. Um, do you still have availability, or what's your capacity to actually work with individuals as well?
Yeah, I do have 1.5 days a week where I'm available for one-to-one sessions. And that's for people, whether they've done the course or not. Sometimes people just book those sessions separately. And what's good about that is it can be on any part of, the burnout. It can be, more general life coaching or other types of tools as well, depending on what's going on for them. Energetic support, so things around, looking at time management, stress management, boundaries, connection to purpose.
Yeah,
Mm.
fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Kate. Um, I've actually learned a lot through the interviews. And yeah, so have a look at the links with the video to access the course. And you're on Instagram, you've got your web page there with more information. And
Mhm.
you've been we've been talking to the Burnout Lady and
Woo-hoo!
hopefully having a conversation soon.
Great. Thank you so much and have a great day. And thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
All the best.